Never thought the worst day of my life would happen at a birthday party. Not a wedding, not a funeral. A birthday party with balloons and a sheet cake from Costco and my aunt making her famous deviled eggs in the kitchen. But that's where it happened. That's where my brother's girlfriend put her hands on my 7-year-old son, and that's where everything I thought I knew about my family shattered into something I'm still picking up off the floor. Let me back up. My son Benji is the kind of kid who walks into a room and immediately finds the dog. Doesn't matter whose house it is, doesn't matter if he's never been there before. He will locate that dog within 45 seconds and spend the rest of the evening on the floor with it. He's quiet, thoughtful, a little serious for his age. His second-grade teacher told me last spring that he was the most empathetic kid she'd taught in 20 years. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying it because I want you to understand who he is before I tell you what was done to him. I'm a nurse. I work pediatric oncology at a regional hospital in Ohio, which means I have seen things that would rearrange your understanding of what suffering looks like. I don't say that lightly either. What I do for a living has taught me that I can hold a lot, that I can absorb shock and keep moving. I thought that made me strong. It does in some ways. But it also meant that when things started going wrong that Saturday in September, I kept trying to find the rational explanation. I kept looking for the part where this made sense. My dad turned 60 that weekend. He's the kind of man who would have been happy with a backyard barbecue and some cold beer, but my brother, his name is Kurt, had other ideas. Kurt is the oldest. I'm the middle child. Our younger sister lives in Portland and couldn't make it, which, looking back, I think saved her a lot. Kurt decided Dad needed a party, a real one. He booked out the back room of a restaurant called the Mill House, which is one of those converted barn places with Edison bulbs and a charcuterie situation on every table. It seats about 60 people. Kurt invited 80. I first heard about the party 2 months before it happened. Kurt called me on a Tuesday evening while I was folding laundry and told me the plan. He was excited in that way he gets, talking fast, already halfway into the details before he'd asked if I even thought it was a good idea. I said it sounded nice. I asked if he needed help with anything. What he said next caught me off guard. Yeah, actually. I was thinking we split the cost, you and me. I paused the show I had playing in the background. Split it how? Even. Down the middle. He told me the total. The venue alone was $4,000. Then catering, the cake, a DJ he'd already booked, flowers for the tables, a photo booth rental. All in, he was looking at just over $9,000. He wanted me to put in $4,500. I want to be clear, I make a decent living. I'm not struggling. But I am a single mother. Benji's father has been out of the picture since Benji was 2. And child support is a word that exists on paper for us and not much else in practice. I have a savings account I've been building since Benji was born. Money I set aside every month without fail. Earmarked for his future. College, a car when he's old enough, whatever he needs. I don't touch it. I've never touched it. I told Kurt that $4,500 was a lot for me right now and asked if we could maybe scale things back a little. A smaller venue, home cooking, something Dad would actually prefer anyway. Kurt got quiet in that particular way of his. The way that means he's deciding whether to be understanding or offended. He went with offended. Dad only turned 60 once, he said. I know that. This is important to me. It's important to me too. I just can't spend that much right now. He said okay, fine, whatever, and hung up. I figured we'd revisit it. I figured he'd calm down and we'd find a compromise. That's what I've always done with Kurt. Waited for him to come back around, because he always does. He's not a bad person. He's just someone who wants what he wants and takes a while to adjust when he doesn't get it. What I didn't know was that he went directly from that phone call to his girlfriend. Her name is Rochelle. She and Kurt have been together for about 3 years. She's 38, she works in real estate, and she has a way of entering a room like she's already assessed its value. I'm not trying to be uncharitable. In small doses, she's fine. At family dinners, she can be funny. And she clearly makes Kurt happy. And I had always genuinely tried to like her. But there was something underneath the surface with Rochelle that I couldn't ever quite name. A sharpness that came out sometimes when things didn't go her way. A look she'd give that made you feel like you'd failed some test you didn't know you were taking. Benji didn't like her. He never said it outright. He's too polite for that. But he always went looking for the dog extra fast at Kurt's house. There was never a dog there. He'd just disappear somewhere and reappear when it was time to leave. The month before the party, Kurt called again. He didn't mention the money. He talked about the plans, asked if I was bringing anything, confirmed the time. It felt like a reset. I thought we were okay. I drove to Columbus that Saturday with Benji in the back seat, listening to his audiobook, his sneakers tapping the seat in front of him in time with something only he could hear. It was one of those early fall afternoons that feels like an apology for summer. Cool and gold and clean. He asked me if Grandpa liked chocolate cake. I said yes, very much. He said good because he'd made a card with a picture of a chocolate cake on it and he wanted the cake in real life to match. We got there a little after 4. The restaurant was already filling up. My aunt had saved us seats near the front, and Benji immediately spotted my dad and ran to him. Dad scooped him up even though Benji is way too big for that now. And Benji didn't complain. That image, the two of them at the edge of the room, Benji's arms around my dad's neck, both of them laughing at something. I've been holding on to that image because of what came after it. I was standing near the gift table talking to one of my dad's friends from work when Kurt appeared at my elbow. Can I talk to you for a second? I followed him to the hallway near the restrooms. Rochelle was already there. She was wearing a cream-colored blazer and she had her arms crossed and she was looking at me with an expression I can only describe as prepared. Kurt said, "So we need to talk about the money." My stomach dropped. Okay. I've been covering everything out of pocket. The venue, the food, all of it. I need you to reimburse me your half. I reminded him of our conversation 2 months ago. I reminded him that I'd said I couldn't do 4,500. I reminded him that he'd said okay. He said he'd changed his mind. Rochelle said quietly, "It's not that much money, honestly. Not for a nurse." I looked at her. I said as calmly as I could, "You don't know what my financial situation is." She smiled. Not a warm smile. "We know you have savings." Something in me went very still. I asked how she knew that. Kurt said, "You mentioned it before." I don't think I had. I'm careful about money talk with family, always have been, because this exact thing is why. But even if I had mentioned it once in passing, even if I'd said something offhand about putting money aside for Benji, that wasn't an invitation. "That money is for Benji," I said. "It's a party for your father," Rochelle said. "I think that takes priority." I said no, clearly, directly, without hedging. No. I was not pulling from Benji's savings to pay for a party I hadn't agreed to at a price point I'd specifically said I couldn't manage. I was not doing that. Kurt's face did something complicated. He looked almost hurt, which confused me because he was the one asking me to do something unreasonable. He said I was being selfish. He said Dad deserved better from me. He said a lot of things that I stood there and took because we were in a hallway at my father's birthday party and I wasn't going to make a scene. I went back to the table. Benji was drawing on a paper placemat with the crayons they'd put out for the kids. He showed me the drawing, a rocket ship with a dog in the window, and I laughed and put my arm around him and thought, this is what matters. That's it, right here. The dinner went fine on the surface. My dad made a speech that made everyone cry. Benji ate all of his mac and cheese and most of my roll. The cake came out, and it was chocolate, just like on the card, and Benji looked at me like he'd arranged it personally. The trouble started after the cake. There was a small area near the back of the room where a few of the kids had gathered. 3 or 4 of them, cousins and family friends, doing what kids do when adults stop paying attention. Benji was sitting on the floor with one of my cousin's daughters, both of them looking at something on her tablet. I could see him from where I was sitting. I was keeping one eye on him the way you do. What happened next took maybe 45 seconds, and I have replayed it so many times that I can see it in slow motion, even though it happened very fast. Rochelle walked to the back of the room. I don't know exactly why. I think maybe she was going to get her purse, which was hanging on one of the chairs back there. Benji was sitting close to that area, and he must have said something. I honestly still don't know what he said. My aunt told me later she thought he just asked Rochelle a question about the game on the tablet. Something innocent and offhand. And whatever it was, something about it struck Rochelle the wrong way. I watched her turn toward him. I watched her say something sharp. Something I couldn't hear from across the room. And then I watched her grab Benji by the arm, yank him up off the floor, and shove him, hard, into the wall behind him. He made a sound I have never heard him make before. Like the air left his body all at once. I was moving before I was conscious of deciding to move. I got maybe 4 steps and my mom caught my arm. "Just let it go," she said. Don't make this a thing. I looked at her. I said, let go of my arm. She didn't. She said, you know how Rochelle is. He probably said something that set her off. I pulled free of her grip. I crossed the room and I put myself between Benji and Rochelle, and I looked at my son and he was pressing his back against the wall, and there were tears on his face. But he wasn't crying out loud, he was doing that terrible silent thing kids do when they're so shocked they can't make sound. I picked him up. He put his face against my neck and I held him and I turned to face Rochelle and I said, don't ever touch my son again. The room had gone very quiet. Rochelle said, he was being disrespectful. I said, he is 7 years old. Kurt was there now. He said, hey, everyone just calm down, I said. Your girlfriend put her hands on my child, he said. He probably provoked. I didn't let him finish. I didn't have anything left for that sentence. What I did not expect was who spoke next. Near the far end of the room, there was a woman I didn't know well. One of my dad's colleagues from the university where he teaches. Her name was Dr. Patricia Ose, and she was somewhere in her 50s. Soft-spoken. The kind of person who had spent the whole dinner listening more than she talked. I had exchanged maybe 6 words with her all evening. She stood up. I need to say something, she said, and her voice was quiet, but it carried. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and I am also a mandatory reporter. What I just witnessed was physical aggression against a minor. I have a professional and legal obligation to report what I saw tonight. I want everyone in this room to understand that. The silence that followed was different from the silence before. Heavier. Rochelle's face changed. Dr. Ose looked at me. Is your son hurt? I checked him. His arm was red where she'd grabbed him. He winced when I touched it. I said, yes, I thought so. She said, you should take him to be evaluated. And I strongly encourage you to file a police report tonight. I'll give you my card and I'll provide a witness statement. My mom made a sound of protest. My aunt said, oh my God. Kurt looked at Rochelle. Rochelle looked at Kurt. My dad, who had been so still during all of this that I'd half forgotten he was there, stood up from his chair at the head of the table and said, this is over. This party is over. His voice was calm. I had not heard that voice from him in a long time. It's the voice that means there is no discussion. He walked toward me. He put his hand on the back of my head and he looked at Benji and he said, hey buddy, are you okay? Benji pulled back just enough to look at my dad. He said, she was really mean. My dad said, I know, I'm sorry. Then he turned to Kurt and he said, you need to leave, take Rochelle and go. Kurt started talking. My dad said his name once, just once, in that same voice, and Kurt stopped. I took Benji to urgent care that night. His arm wasn't broken, but there was bruising, and they documented everything. The marks, the timeline, Benji's account of what happened. I filed a police report with Dr. Ose's contact information. The attending nurse, bless her, took photographs for the file. The days after that were quiet in a strange way. My phone was full of texts I didn't respond to. My mom called 6 times. Kurt called twice. Rochelle did not call, which was the only sensible thing any of them did. My dad called once, the morning after. He said he was sorry it happened under his roof. Even though it wasn't his roof, technically, it was a rented event space, but I understood what he meant. He said he loved me. He said he was proud of me for not backing down from those 2 months ago. I didn't know what to do with that. I held it for a long time. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the police department. There was enough documentation and witness testimony. Dr. Ose had followed through, as had 2 other guests who'd seen what happened, that Rochelle was charged with misdemeanor assault. Not a felony. I know that's not enough for a lot of people. I struggled with it too. But the record exists now. It cannot be undone. And there are 2 other families who saw what she did, who signed their names to what they saw, and who will not be looking at her the same way again. Kurt called me the week after the charges were filed. He did not ask how Benji was. He said he thought I was overreacting. He said family doesn't go to the police over family things. He said I had humiliated him. I thought about what to say for a long time. Then I said, your girlfriend hurt my son. That's where the line is for me. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient. He hung up. My mom sent me a long email that I read once and didn't respond to. In it, she said that I had always had a way of making things bigger than they needed to be. She said Benji needed to learn to let things roll off him. She said Rochelle had apologized, though she had not, to me or to Benji, not once, and that I should accept it and move on. I did not move on in the way she meant. What I did instead, I found a therapist for Benji, a play therapist in our area who specializes in childhood trauma. We started going weekly. The first few sessions, he mostly played with the sandbox she had in the corner of her office and didn't talk much. By the fourth session, he was calling her by her first name and telling her about the rocket ship dog he'd drawn on the placemat. And the week after that, he said, out of nowhere on the drive home, "I know it wasn't my fault. Dr. Tom. Kim said so, and I think she's right." I had to pull into a parking lot for a minute after that. I found a family attorney and looked into what, if anything, could be done about the pattern of financial pressure from Kurt. There wasn't much there legally, since I'd never actually given the money, but the attorney helped me understand what documentation to keep going forward. And I made a decision about the holidays. I told my mom in October that Benji and I would not be attending Thanksgiving or Christmas at the family home this year. I told her that was not a punishment, and it was not a statement. It was just what Benji needed. It was what I needed. She said I was breaking up the family. I thought about that for a while too. And then I thought about Benji on the floor of that restaurant, back against the wall, silent, shocked. And I thought about the woman who stood up across the room when everyone else was finding reasons to stay seated. And I decided that what I was actually doing was drawing a circle. A small one, tight around the people who show up. My dad is inside that circle. Dr. Osai is in it, in her way. Benji's therapist. My friend from work who brought us dinner 3 nights in a row without asking if we wanted it, just showed up at the door. Some circles get smaller before they're right. 2 months after the party, Kurt and Rochelle broke up. I heard about it through my aunt. I don't know the details and I didn't ask. I felt nothing clean about it. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just a tired kind of recognition that some things end the way they were always going to. My dad came to visit us in November. Just him. Just for a weekend. He slept on the pull-out couch and Benji made him a birthday card even though his birthday had already passed, because Benji felt like the first one didn't count. Dad put it on the refrigerator in his kitchen when he got home. He texted me a photo of it. Benji is doing better. Not all the way better. I think some things take longer than we want them to. But last week, he walked into a neighbor's backyard for a fall cookout and found their golden retriever within 30 seconds, and he spent the whole afternoon on the grass with that dog and came home with fur on his jacket and a look on his face like the world was basically okay. That's what I'm holding on to. That look on his face. Not the restaurant. Not my mom's voice saying let it go. Not Kurt asking me to choose between my brother's pride and my son's future. And acting like that was a reasonable thing to ask. Just Benji and the dog, and the afternoon light coming through the yard. That's the part that's mine to keep. I keep thinking about the moment my mom grabbed my arm and said, "Let it go." Not because I'm angry at her anymore. I'm not. Not the way I was. But because of what it revealed. She wasn't protecting Rochelle. She wasn't even really protecting Kurt. She was protecting the version of us that could all still sit at the same table and pretend everything was fine. That's what let it go actually means, most of the time. It means, don't make the rest of us uncomfortable with your truth. I couldn't do that. Not with Benji standing against that wall with tears on his face and no sound coming out. What I've come to understand, slowly, the way you understand things that cost you something, is that the choices we make in the moments that matter most are the ones that define what we're actually made of. Not the big declarations, not the things we say we'd do. The actual moment, when your mom has your arm and the room is watching and every instinct says, just smooth it over. What you do then is who you are. I crossed that room. That's who I am. There's a version of the story where I took the path of least resistance, where I let it go, went home, put Benji to bed, and spent the next decade quietly managing the damage of a family that never faced what it did. I've thought about that version. It would have been easier in the short term. It would have cost me less in the immediate. But I think about Benji in that therapist's office, and the 4th session where he started calling her by her first name, and the drive home when he said I know it wasn't my fault. And I think about what he learned from watching me that night, that when someone hurts you, the people who love you say so, out loud, in public. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when it costs something. That's not a small thing to teach a child. It might be the most important thing. Dr. Osei standing up across that room, that stays with me too. She didn't know me. She had no stake in our family drama. But she saw something wrong, and she had both the clarity to name it and the courage to act on it. In a room full of people who were choosing not to. I think about that when I'm tired and the situation is hard, and it would be easier to look the other way. Someone in some room somewhere is going to be the person who stands up. You get to decide whether that's you. Kurt thought I was overreacting. My mum thought I was breaking up the family. What they couldn't see, or wouldn't, is that I wasn't blowing anything up. I was just refusing to keep building on a foundation that had cracks in it nobody wanted to talk about. The money demand. You're so selfish. The arm grabbed at my wrist. These things don't appear from nowhere. They're the end of a long road that started a lot earlier, and somewhere along that road you have to decide whether you're going to keep walking it or turn around. I turned around. It cost me a version of my family I'd been holding on to probably longer than it deserved. But I have my dad, who drove up to sleep on my pull-out couch and put Benji's second birthday card on his refrigerator. I have my son, who finds the dog within 30 seconds of arriving anywhere, who told his therapist what happened and heard that it wasn't his fault and believed it. I have the circle I drew, small and tight and honest. Some things you don't get back once you give them away. Your child's sense of safety is one of them. I wasn't willing to trade that for a seat at a table that was never really safe to begin with. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the restaurant, not the charges, not Kurt's silence on the other end of the phone. Just the fact that I know, without any doubt, that I did right by my son. In the moment that counted, I crossed the room. Everything else is just what came after.